If You Were a Kid Aboard the Titanic by Josh Gregory, illustrated by Sebastia Serra. A Different Way of Life. On April 10, 1912, a ship called the RMS Titanic set off from its harbor in Southampton, England, on its first voyage. After picking up additional passengers in France and Ireland, the Titanic began the journey across the Atlantic Ocean to New York City. The thousands of people aboard couldn't have imagined the disaster that waited ahead. Imagine you were a kid aboard the Titanic. The trip to New York was scheduled to take about a week. During that time, the Titanic would be your home. You would eat your meals, bathe, and sleep on the ship. You would also have plenty of time to have fun with friends and family. You might even meet some interesting new people. Turn the page to begin your own voyage aboard the Titanic. You will see that life today is a lot different than it was in the past. Meet Alice. Alice Carver has lived in England all her life, but things have been tough since her father died 2 years ago. Alice and her mother are moving to America to live with relatives. They don't have a lot of money, so they had to buy the cheapest tickets for the Titanic's voyage. Alice's mom said that means they have to stay in the bottom of the ship, but Alice has other plans. She is sure she'll find a way to see the rest of the ship. Meet William. William Alexander III comes from a very wealthy British family. His parents bought tickets for one of the finest suites on the Titanic simply to experience the great ship's first voyage. It will be William's first time making such a long trip across the ocean, and he is a little scared. Everyone says the Titanic is almost unsinkable, but he is worried anyway. Worse yet, William's older cousin George is coming too. George always teases William and makes him feel bad. William looked all around with wide eyes as he climbed the ramp onto the Titanic. He wasn't looking forward to the long trip across the ocean, but he had to admit that the ship was amazing. Suddenly, someone pushed him from behind. "Keep moving!" shouted his cousin George. "Unless you're too scared, that is." William sighed and kept walking up the ramp. Why did George have to be so annoying? A remarkable ship. If you wanted to cross the ocean in the early 1900s, you had to go by ship. To make the long voyage more comfortable, companies built better and better ships. The Titanic was expected to be one of the biggest and best of its time. People around the world followed news of its construction. The Titanic was operated by a company called White Star Line. As soon as she was on board, Alice was ready to explore. It was her first time on a ship. She wanted to see everything. "Don't go too far," her mom said as she unpacked in their cramped third-class room. But Alice was already out the door and skipping down the hallway. There were lots of people moving around the ship. Alice realized that this was a good chance to sneak into the first and second class areas. First, second, and third class. On the Titanic, you would be in one of 3 classes depending on your ticket. First class tickets were the most expensive. If you were in first class, you would be able to see the ship's most impressive areas. Third class tickets were the cheapest. If you were in this class, you would be limited to a small part of the ship. You would not be allowed to enter the most amazing spaces of the Titanic. Passengers stroll along the deck of the Titanic. William was also out of his room. George had been bothering him all day. Taking a walk was the only way to get away. But his walk wasn't as peaceful as he planned. Suddenly, a girl came running around the corner and crashed into him. A crew member was chasing after her. "You can't be here!" he shouted. William thought quickly. "It's okay," he said. "This is my sister." The finest rooms. The first-class suite on the Titanic was extremely expensive and only affordable for very rich people. It would cost thousands of dollars in today's money. A suite included your own bathroom and rooms for getting dressed. The entire suite was decorated in the finest furniture. First-class suites were also located on the parts of the ship where you wouldn't feel the ocean's movement as much. The Titanic's first-class rooms looked like this. "Thanks," Alice said as the crew member walked away. "I almost got caught." The two introduced themselves. "Why was he chasing you?" asked William. "I'm in third class," Alice said, "but I really wanted to see the rest of the ship." William smiled. "I think I can help you out." Life in third class. If you had a third-class ticket on the Titanic, you would share a small room with up to 5 other people. You would sleep on a bunk bed. You would also share a bathroom with other travelers. But third-class rooms were still very nice. They all had running water and electricity. You probably wouldn't have had those things in your home if you were a third-class passenger. The Titanic's third-class rooms looked like this. Glad to spend some time away from George, William helped Alice explore the Titanic over the next few days. Alice wasn't supposed to be in first class, but as long as they were together, no one would suspect her of being out of place. The two new friends walked up a huge staircase made of beautiful carved wood. They went for a swim in the ship's pool. They played games outside on the deck. They even listened to an orchestra play music. You would have many ways to stay busy on board the Titanic. In first class, you could exercise or play sports in a gym. You could also enjoy cafes and restaurants. In third class, you might gather in a place called the general room. There, people talked and played games. You might also have enjoyed visiting the ship's decks for ocean views. A woman rides an exercise bike in the Titanic's gym. On the 5th night aboard the Titanic, Alice was sleeping peacefully above her mother in their room. Suddenly, she was jolted awake as she felt the ship shake. Other people on the ship began to wake up too. Eventually, crew members started knocking on cabin doors. They told people on the ship to go to the decks to get ready to board lifeboats. Alice started to worry. What was happening? A deadly crash. On the night of April 14, 1912, the Titanic was damaged when it ran into an iceberg floating in the water. The iceberg tore holes along the side of the ship. Water began pouring inside. Depending on where you were on the ship, you might not have known anything was wrong. Some people noticed right away. Only a portion of an iceberg sticks out above the water's surface. The underwater part is often even bigger. In first class, William and his family started making their way toward the deck. Some people nearby were laughing and joking. They didn't think anything was wrong. But William knew that his worst fear had come true. The ship was sinking. He thought about Alice down in third class. It was so far away. Would she be able to make it to the lifeboats in time? He needed to find her. A really big vessel. The Titanic was a very big ship. It also had many different levels. This meant that it could take someone a long time to travel from one part of the ship to another. As a result, many people in third class had a hard time reaching the ship's lifeboats in time. Titanic was 92.5 feet wide and 882.5 feet long. Alice and her mom were trying to get to the lifeboats, but the third class area was very crowded. It was hard to move. Luckily, Alice knew a shortcut from sneaking into the other parts of the ship. "Mom, follow me," she said. As they were making their way through the ship, Alice turned a corner and ran face first into a young boy. A lack of lifeboats. One reason so many people died on the Titanic is that there weren't enough lifeboats. The ship's 20 lifeboats could only hold 1,178 people. That meant more than 1,000 people simply couldn't fit. To make matters worse, many lifeboats left in a hurry before they were full. Titanic survivors paddled to safety in a lifeboat. "William!" Alice yelled in surprise. "What are you doing here?" "I was looking for you," William answered. "Come on!" They ran to the deck. People all around were starting to panic. William's family was looking around for a lifeboat. "What are we going to do?" George asked. He had tears in his eyes. "Over here," William said. "There's plenty of room in this boat." A tragic end. Many people never made it off the Titanic. About 2,200 passengers and crew members were aboard the ship. However, only about 700 survived when the ship sank. If you were in first class, you had the best chance of making it onto a lifeboat. Most people in third class were not so lucky. A bag and other objects left behind by the Titanic's passengers. As they floated in the lifeboat, everyone looked back toward the ship. Their hearts ached as it broke in half and slowly sank into the ocean. About an hour later, a large ship arrived and brought everyone aboard. Alice was freezing cold, but happy to finally be out of the lifeboat. "I guess you're braver than I thought," George said to William. "Maybe," William replied as he and Alice exchanged a smile. "But right now, I just want to get back on land." 73 years later. The Titanic was hidden on the ocean floor for many decades. Finally, in 1985, ocean explorers discovered the wreck. Since then, experts have studied it in detail. They have brought back many items that once belonged to the Titanic's passengers. They have even brought back pieces of the ship itself. This has helped us learn more about what it was like to be on the Titanic. Explorers took many photos showing how the Titanic had changed after decades underwater. The route of the Titanic. Timeline: 1909. Construction of the Titanic begins in Ireland. May 31st, 1911. About 100,000 people watch as the Titanic is put in water for the first time. April 10th, 1912. The Titanic sets off on its voyage from Southampton, England. April 14th, 1912. The Titanic collides with an iceberg in the middle of the night and soon sinks. September 1st, 1985. A team of researchers discovers the wreck of the Titanic. If you enjoyed this story, I'll tell you how you can get your very own copy of this book in the description box below.